Hello, and welcome to the 5-minute summary of the third workshop on how to create theories of change worth believing in. Today, I will address how the world resists your theory of change and how you can use the theory of change to predict and solve for potential problems. My name is Erik Dutilly, and I hold a PhD in education research from CU Boulder. I own and operate the Western Institute for Education Evaluation and Consulting. I offer these periodic seminars as a way to increase capacity in organizations for conducting good and useful evaluation for specifically organizational learning. All right, so today we're going to look at risk analysis and how theories of change can be used in this. So the title here is The World Resists Your Program. And the first step, we're going to do this whole thing in 5 steps. The first step is going to be, we need to maintain a little bit of healthy skepticism about the functionality of our programs. The reason why is basically programs typically have indirect effects on the exact things that they want to change. Very rarely do we have an opportunity to be in the exact place and time when we need our intervention. So we kind of try and equip people with ideas and attitude changes so that they make behavioral changes down the road. But very rarely can we be there in the moment when a kid is about to take a drink of alcohol, get behind the steering wheel, or vape for the first time. That's just not how it works in the world. So we want to have a little bit of healthy skepticism knowing that we indirectly influence the world. For instance, in this theory of change that we're going to visit a few times here, we have a 10-week purchase curriculum that influences learning right here. So kids learn, then that leads to an attitude change. And that attitude change about vaping ultimately leads to a behavioral change. And that's what I mean by indirect effect. There's this chain of command. And that's why we have these boxes and arrows in these theories of change, because of the indirect influence that we have over behavior. Step 2, after we have a little bit of healthy skepticism, we're going to focus on one causal chain at a time, and we're going to conduct a general risk brainstorm. So what goes on here? In step 2, we want to stick with one causal chain in your theory of change, and this is going to help us to not be overwhelmed. Once we isolate our chain of events that we're going to work with, we'll begin a general brainstorm of what can go wrong. We can bring in staff, friends, and experts. We can even do a little bit of reading on the topic to learn a little bit more about it. So to keep with the vaping example, we have a couple of things here that influence why kids vape. So this is some reasons why kids are into it. There's really effective marketing campaigns, and they could be addicted. So these are things we want to be aware of when we ask ourselves, why didn't all the kids stop vaping? Well, there's a couple of reasons right here that we've already raised about why our program isn't going to be as effective as we would love it to be. Then we're going to do a second brainstorm. So the first one's kind of a general brainstorm. Second one is going to be a little bit more structured. In this case, we're going to identify specific features of the setting where we're going to be and characteristics of the target population that we think could cause problems for our program. Characteristics of people and places that show different effects from our program are referred to as moderating variables. Some really common examples of moderating variables are race, age, and socioeconomic status. They're very common in education research. So here we have a couple of these moderating variables. School with an open campus at a high school, for instance, that might be a big deal. That might have a little bit to do with have a little bit of influence over the vaping culture. We might also think about this nice little moderating variable, which is like, well, should we do our intervention elementary, middle, and high school? And if so, why? Step 3, locate the risk factors in your theory of change. So once we have our positive theory of change, our sort of structured map like this, we can begin to put our risks into it. And location matters critically here. We want to place these risk factors in locations that are true to where the problem may actually emerge. In this example, I specifically put the chaotic classroom environment between the curriculum and the student learning. I suspect that this is where poor classroom management will disrupt our program's effects. So right here, I placed this chaotic classroom environment directly in between our curriculum and the learning that goes on. And the reason I do that is because this is exactly where I suspect things are going to go wrong. I'll zoom in as well on a single causal chain to make it a little bit easier to map these things out, and I'll begin to put in all the different factors that I come up with that I think matter. So teachers might resist a stock curriculum. We also might have a star athlete in the classroom or in the school that is promoting vaping, showing that they're invincible, that vaping doesn't affect them and their athleticism isn't affected at all negatively by smoking. Step 4, let's brainstorm some solutions to these problems. Once we've identified these problems, we don't want to just sit and gloat in some kind of negativity. We want to anticipate problems and solve them. So we should brainstorm our problems and then assign them potential solutions that we can work on and at least begin to discuss. For instance, we might want to conduct an intervention at the middle school level. So we look at this moderating variable of age and we ask ourselves, well, let's pick an age group that hasn't really started vaping much yet. That would be a great idea, or where the behaviors start to emerge, because we might have a good bit of leverage at that point. We might not want to do it much, much later in their lives because they've already made a decision to vape, and we're not going to be able to stop them from vaping. And step 5, let's repeat the process, but for enhancing factors. So enhancing factors are things that could increase the likelihood of our program being really strong. So again, we're still going to look at the moderating and sort of the risk factors, but identifying risk factors is not really the same as identifying enhancing factors. We may be able to identify and predict ideal environments and populations where our program will do great. This analysis can be highly useful during the program's strategic planning phase. So here I use a totally different color, and I try and keep it separate from the risk analysis so that it doesn't get super duper cluttered. The idea being that I can locate a couple of things that we suspect would be very, very important and very helpful for launching our program. So maybe our school that we want to work in has a teacher culture of out-of-school collaboration. So they work with programs that are from not inside their community program, so to speak, and that would be great. We also might have a school that supports anti-vaping campaign and messaging. So they might already sort of be on board with continuing the intervention even after we've done our 10-week curriculum. So we could post posters and they can give periodic announcements, and that would be amazing as well. That would be an enhancing factor that we can think of that would be in the environment. All right, so now we've got to the end here. So let's summarize it. A positive theory of change, or a basic theory of change, is a really good first step. That's really important and important to do well. We covered that in workshop 1 and 2. Here, what we're looking at is we're looking at how we can use this idea of a moderating variable, like some demographic feature or a feature of an environment, to predict and estimate positive and negative impacts. This is where we do the negative risk analysis, but then we also do an enhancing. We should do these 2 separate types of analyses because they give us different information. And doing a negative analysis or like a risk analysis is not the same thing as looking at things that are positive. Those are different types of analyses. We do both. And we might ask ourselves, how would we even know what makes a difference in how would we even get a sense of what enhances our program or is going to cause risk to our program? And the sources of information for that are, at a very minimum, you can use research from evaluation or scholarly research. You can talk to experts who have experience in these programs. You can talk to your own staff and colleagues that work on this. And at the end of the day, common sense can help as well. Common sense being kind of a stand-in for experience. So people's experiences and your experiences as well. And with that, I want to thank you very much for joining me on this expedition into learning about theories of change worth believing in. And I hope you enjoyed this presentation on risk analysis.